Yes, today I'm going to tell you about a man whose life will truly give you goosebumps. Idi Amin. You may have heard his name, but if you know his entire life story, I bow before you with respect. Although it is known that Amin came into the world under unclear circumstances. Even exactly when he was born is a disputed topic, because even his own son Hussein says he was born in 1928. Yet the majority of historians say 1923 to 1924. Where he was born is also unclear. Some say he was born in Kampala, but this is most likely made up. In all probability, he was born in Koboko, a small settlement in the northwest near today's South Sudan border. As for his father's, that too is shrouded in mystery. The man was from the Kakwa tribe, and it is said he converted from Catholicism to Islam and named himself Amin Dada. But according to some sources, he was actually Nubian and was already Muslim. In either case, what we know is this. This man abandoned young Idi and his mother. So Amin grew up alone with his mother. His mother Asa Ate's origins are also disputed. Whether she was Kakwa or Lagbara is not clear. In short, everything about this man's life has been a mystery from the very beginning. Uganda, an artificial country. To understand Amin, you first need to understand Uganda. And Uganda is truly a very interesting place, but not in a good way. Think of it this way. The British came to Africa and drew lines on a map as they pleased. They said, "Let this be Uganda." But within those drawn lines lived peoples who were very different from one another. In the south, the Baganda; in the north, the Kakwa and Lukbara; in the West Sudanese communities. Each with a different culture, a different language, everything different. On top of that, there were religious matters. Muslims in the north, Christians in the south, and those with traditional beliefs. What did the British do to manage this chaos? They pushed the Baganda, who had converted to Protestantism, to the forefront, used them as a conduit, and pushed those at the north to the background. They deepened divisions that already existed. The seeds they sowed would bear much heavier fruit in the years to come. Soldier Amin. Around the early 1940s, Amin went to an Islamic school in Bambo. What did he do next? He joined the army, the King's African Rifles, the KAR, established by the British. And here, he earned himself a good reputation. British officers began to like him very much. He was fast and strong, dedicated to his work. He was quickly promoted, and in the 1950s was even sent to Stirling, Scotland for training. This memory of Scotland took such hold in his mind that in later years he gave his sons Scottish names, dressed a regiment of soldiers in Scottish kilts. He even went so far as to say, "I want to be the King of Scotland." But we'll get to that. He took part in the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya and fought successfully. In 1959, he was granted the title of Effendi, at the time the highest rank an African could achieve in the British Army in East Africa. And after this, we come to a very critical point. In 1961 to 62, cattle raid uprisings took place along the Uganda-Kenya border. Amin unleashed his soldiers on the villagers and had a massacre carried out. Dozens of civilians lost their lives. Normally, this would require a court-martial. But what was the outcome? Nothing. The reason was that Ugandan independence was very close, and the British said, "We don't want a scandal right now." And this man went unpunished. It is precisely these decisions that changed the course of history. Africa gains independence. During this period, all of Africa was boiling. The Atlantic Charter signed in 1941 had said, "Colonial rule will give freedom to peoples." And from the 1950s onward, this promise began to be fulfilled. In 1956, Morocco and Tunisia gained their freedom. 1960 was a true year of independence. Cameroon, Senegal, Togo, Mali, Niger, Ivory Coast, Chad, and many more declared their independence. Britain released Ghana in 1957 and Nigeria in 1961. Uganda became independent in 1962. But there was a problem. It was independent, but it had no solid political structure. There was no strong leader who had studied in France or England and could say, "We can now govern ourselves." A hasty election was held, and Milton Obote became the first prime minister. Was Obote a bad leader? Not exactly, but everything went badly for him, especially after 1966, when he set the Constitution aside and effectively became a dictator. But in that era, such things were not uncommon. There was Mobutu in the Congo, Bokassa in Central Africa. Everywhere, strong men were seizing power. Amin rises. During the Obote era, Amin rose at an incredible pace. Captain in 1962, Major in 1963, Deputy Army Commander in 1964, one of the top commanders in 1965, and by 1970, Commander General, the head of the entire command structure. How did he rise, you might ask? Partly through talent, partly by becoming complicit in Obote's dirty dealings. The two of them were making money through gold and ivory smuggling between Congo and Uganda, selling weapons, filling their own pockets. When this smuggling was exposed in 1966, Obote moved first and seized full power through a coup. But eventually, by 1970, Obote realized that Amin was truly a dangerous man and removed him from his position. He was preparing to open cases against him. But the process moved too slowly, and Amin sensed it. The coup, January 25, 1971. While Obote was attending a Commonwealth meeting in Singapore, Amin made his move. He seized Kampala. He took control of the radio stations, and he told the people, "I have taken power from Obote, who was corrupt. I will restore the Constitution. We will hold democratic elections within a few months." Of course, none of this ever happened. Obote fled to Tanzania. Amin turned Uganda into a hell for its people for 8 years. The early years pretending to be good. Interestingly, the world initially welcomed Amin positively. Britain and Israel supported the coup. They said, "This man will be easier to manage than Obote." In July 1971, Amin visited Britain. He met with Prime Minister Heath and attended a lunch at Buckingham Palace. He also went to Israel. He asked both countries for military support, but both refused him. But none of this stopped them from watching what Amin was doing in Uganda. Or perhaps they simply chose not to see it. In that same month, 2 American journalists and academics went to a military barracks to investigate political killings in Uganda. They were warned, told not to go. They ignored all the warnings, and both were killed there. This was the first clear signal of what Amin truly was. But despite all this, the world still couldn't fully grasp what was happening. The deal with Gaddafi. When Britain and Israel refused to provide weapons, where did Amin turn? To Libya, to Gaddafi. And here Amin had become an extraordinary lie machine. He told Gaddafi, "Nearly 70% of Uganda's population is Muslim." The reality? 6%. and the vast majority of them lived in the northwestern part of the country. Gaddafi believed this and was convinced. He brought Uganda into the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and provided military support. In return, Amin had promised, "I will restrict the religious freedoms of Christians." The expulsion of Asians, the event that truly introduced Amin to the world, took place in 1972. On August 4th, he made an announcement. "Asians without Ugandan citizenship have 90 days to leave. Go now." Who exactly were these Asians? A people who had been living in Uganda since the 12th century, controlling 80 to 90% of the country's trade and industry. In 1948, 183 of the 195 cotton mills in Uganda were in the hands of people of Indian origin. Even the banknotes had Gujarati written on them. The British became alarmed because they had told these people, "If you wish to leave, we will give you British citizenship." And now they were forced to airlift 27,000 people to Britain urgently. And what happened to these people as they left? On the road to the airport, everything was taken from them. They were robbed. What happened to Chief Justice Kiwanuka, who opposed this process? He was first arrested and then executed on September 22, 1972, but not in the way any conscience could bear. His ears, nose, and lips were cut off. He was castrated. His internal organs were removed, and finally he was burned. If you want to understand the brutality of what this man did, this scene tells you everything. The result? Uganda's economy collapsed. Businesses were handed over to Amin's men, most of whom could not even read or write. Factories shut down. Inflation soared. By 1975 to 76, the economy had completely fallen apart. The world stage. In 1975, the Organization of African Unity Summit was hosted in Uganda. Amin was chairman at the time, and there he put on a full performance of his presidency. He forcibly brought several British people to a reception. He publicly humiliated British Foreign Secretary Callaghan there. Callaghan had actually come to free a British writer who had been sentenced to prison. The writer had been pardoned, but Callaghan left saying it will no longer be possible to work with this man. During this period, Amin grew closer to the Soviets. He received millions of dollars in aid from them and sent thousands of his soldiers to Eastern Europe for training. And then he sent a telegram to the UN Secretary General praising the Nazis. He wrote that Hitler was right, along with absurd, nonsensical, distorted things about the Holocaust. The world said, "This man is crazy." And they were quite right. The Entebbe airport raid. In 1976, an Air France flight was hijacked while traveling from Tel Aviv to Paris. It had been seized by Palestinians and German activists and was redirected to Entebbe airport. Amin was involved in the affair. Everyone knew it. Non-Jewish passengers were released. Jewish passengers were told, "Free the Palestinian prisoners in Israel, or you will be killed." Then Israeli commandos decided to fly in at night, refueled in Nairobi, and landed at Entebbe. The advantage of having built the airport themselves meant they knew every corner of it. In 90 minutes, they managed to rescue nearly all the hostages, and on their way out, they destroyed Uganda's warplanes and left. The next morning, Amin was stunned by what he heard, and the beginning of the end. In 1977, the Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, Luwum, criticized how Amin was oppressing the country's Christians. Religious leaders gathered together and called for reconciliation. Amin's response: he arrested Lu Wum. The charge was he planned an armed uprising. On February 17, 1977, he paraded him before the public in an open arena. The next day came the announcement: he died in a traffic accident. Nobody believed it. Some reports suggest Amin personally shot him. After these events, Amin was not even invited to the Commonwealth Summit. He was becoming increasingly isolated. First war, then flight. In 1978, cracks began to form within the army. Inside the military, there were factions loyal to Vice President Idrisi rather than Amin. In the south near the border, some units began to revolt. Did Amin turn the crisis into an opportunity? He transformed it into a war with Tanzania. By saying there is a war with an enemy outside, he tried to paper over the cracks forming within. Ugandan forces managed to enter northern Tanzania. Amin announced that he would annex the Kagera region. But in 1979, Tanzania began to strike back. Julius Nyerere mobilized the army. Together with exiled Ugandans, they advanced northward. In the face of this offensive against Amin's forces, his army collapsed and he fled. In March 1979, a decisive battle took place at Lukaya. The Tanzania-Uganda alliance won the battle. After Kampala fell in April, Amin was forced to jump into a helicopter and flee on April 11, 1979. 8 years of dictatorship were over. Life in exile. He first fled to Libya, where Gaddafi accepted him. He then moved to Jeddah, and from there to Saudi Arabia, where he was granted asylum. In his first interview, he said, "I did good things while in power. The people of Uganda want me back." Nobody took his words seriously, of course. In 1989, there was another attempt to return to Uganda. He tried to infiltrate his own country through Zaire. He failed and returned. He spent his final years modestly: sports and the gym, shopping. In the 1970s, luxury goods came to him from London. In the 1990s, cassava and food products from Uganda. In the summer of 2003, he suffered kidney failure. His family said, "Let him come to Uganda. If he's going to die, let him die there." The response: "The moment he sets foot here, he will be prosecuted." He died on August 16, 2003. He was buried in an ordinary public grave in Jeddah. He was never tried before an international court. What did he leave behind? At least 300,000 dead. According to some estimates, that number rises to 800,000. But let us not forget this. This man was not raised and supported through his own means. He was nurtured by the British and Israel. When he carried out the civilian massacre, he was left unpunished because now is not the time. He received every kind of support from Britain and Israel to take power. Throughout the Cold War, both blocs used such dictators as pawns for their own interests. Amin was the product of a monster, that is true, but he was also a monster created by others, and whatever the case, it was the innocent people of Africa who paid the price. Do you think Amin was truly Africa's most brutal dictator of that era? Let's meet in the comments to discuss.